your work you use the term unconscious racism. What do you mean by that exactly?
It's just the opposite of conscious racism in a sense. And conscious racism is someone who is aware that they're a racist, don't mind being a racist, and may practice behavior, discriminatory behavior towards other folks on the basis of race. What happens is that we pick up information, what have you, and we may have heard things as children when we were in our families and so forth, our parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, it doesn't matter. And things that may not have been very favorable towards a particular group, somewhat prejudicial, but as a kid you're sitting there and you don't pay attention. And the parents and the relatives and the adults don't think you're paying attention, they're having adult conversation, what have you. And what we don't realize is that these things do influence, they penetrate and they influence and affect kids. And adults too, for that matter, but mainly children. So you grow up with these attitudes that are spoken, what have you, that you hear because it's just part of the atmosphere in which one lives, whether that is in one's place of worship. The ministers or the priests or the mullahs may not be talking about it, but the people in the congregation will share and talk about things. In schools, athletic fields, in the artistic community, the intelligentsia, university, in virtually all departments of life, you'll have this kind of discourse that goes on. We're affected by it and it's sitting with us. And the only time we become aware that we have something is when we find ourselves in a situation, we have an experience, and then we react to it. And we say, my God, where did that reaction come from? You see, some people use the N-word, not the Negro word, but the other word, all right? They never used it in their lives before, didn't even think a lot about it. They may have seen it in the newspapers and magazines and articles or read it in books and that sort of thing, but that would have been it. But they find themselves in a situation where they're tense, aggravated and so forth in relation to a person of an African descent, African American, whatever, or native person, doesn't matter what. And bingo, the word pops out of their minds and into their mouth, move or whatever, right? You dirty, And they're shocked. They say, my God, where did that come from? That word never crossed my lips before. I hardly ever think about it, what have you. And then we say that what happens is that the person's a good person and come running to their defense and aid of the good person is what we call denial. And denial is a feeling that springs from a sense of shame. And so denial pushes it back down into the unconscious and so forth, and there it lies until the next episode.
When people look at Canada, when I moved to Canada, it's very interesting. They look at Canada on this issue of racism, they say, when I first moved there, they say, how do you like Canada? I said, well, Canada's a nice place. Yeah, you know, we're not Americans. That was a quick reaction. We're not Americans. I'm gonna write a book on racism in Canada and call it, We're Not Americans. It's interesting, it is almost perverse to define yourself by what you're not vis-a-vis someone else. But you know, that's what happens to minority people. All the time. We end up defining ourselves by what we are not in relation to the majoritarian group. And it's amazing, really. We have a situation, friends, in the world. And by and large, through the result of colonialism, all sorts of other things that happen in history and what have you, what's happened in societies, particularly in North America, is this. Reality, that which is real, is white. And anything else is called cultural. So in Canada, I'm a visible racial minority. Who the hell is the invisible racial majority then? Ask yourself that. And if that's the case, for whom have they ever been invisible? White people have been in my life all my life. They were my teachers, doctors, lawyers, judges, police officers, jail guards, although I've never been to jail. Came close, but never gone to jail. And so on. Bus drivers, taxi drivers, and so on. You see, but when a society has a dominant group within it, it sets the tone of what reality is. And other groups, whether they are oppressed or not, are considered to be valid and legitimate as they approximate imitation of the majority group.